and the roll call. So, I believe all of our committee members are in attendance, although Kevin has just stepped out. So Richard, Martin, Kevin, and myself. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Is there anything to disclose from any of the members?
No.
I'll just wait till Kevin comes back here. Yeah, we're just at disclosure of pecuniary interest. You have nothing to disclose?
Nope.
All right. Seeing nothing, I'll move on to the approval of minutes of August the 11th. And that was on pages 3 to 5 of our agenda package there. So are there, if everybody has had a chance to look through those minutes, are there any errors or omissions?
No.
None. I will ask for a mover and seconder for those minutes. Kevin will move. Martin will second. Okay, business arising from the minutes. In our package, there was included average living wage document in Malahide. That was on page 6. So are there any comments? That was basically for our information. And does anyone have any comments or questions about that item or that information?
I guess we didn't have that before we were filling in our spreadsheet there on the information, but it's certainly good to see it now.
Right. And I think we can perhaps use it. It's good information to have, and we can use it as sort of a backdrop to our discussions today and how we'll proceed with some of the things, some of the discussions that we're going to have a little bit later. The cost of benefit package for council members. Now that was not included. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair, through you. There was, I wasn't able to obtain that in time for the agenda package. However, I have now obtained some preliminary information from Manulife, who is the municipal benefit provider. And they provided some rough estimates for several different benefit categories. So one was for group life insurance, as well as extended health care. So that's your typical drugs and other medical costs. And then as well, dental care. So there is a significant difference in the premium amounts. The group life insurance, which they base it on the actual wage. So in this particular case, it would be at about a $50,000 group life benefit. The monthly premium per council member, sorry, not per council member. The monthly benefit to cover all of council for that coverage is $20 a month. So that cost is relatively low. Extended healthcare and dental are significantly more, as I'm sure you can appreciate. The payouts for those types of benefits are significantly higher. So the monthly benefit to cover all council members for extended healthcare is about just under $2,000 a month. And the dental care is about another $800. So for all three of those coverages, the monthly premium is about $2,800 a month. And then there's provincial sales tax on top of that. So that brings you up to about $3,000 a month, or an annual premium of about $36,000. So, and it would be dependent on, of course, what you decided to cover. That's kind of the basic plans. But if you decided to have just extended health care, and I can send this information out to council members. I just received it late yesterday, actually. But I said that to cover all of those things, it's about $3,000 a month or $36,000 annually. And But like I said, if you decided you just wanted to offer dental coverage, that's an option. If you just wanted to offer medical coverage, that's an option. If you just wanted to cover life insurance, that's an option as well. So you can kind of mix and match, but those are kind of your standards, just to give the committee some basic information.
Okay, thank you. Martin?
So and healthcare plans are, the sky's the limit of what you can do with a healthcare plan, but the other Malahide employees, are they covered 100% by the township, or are they contributing off of their wage as well? How does that work?
Currently, the township covers the cost of all of the benefits, with the
Okay.
exception of their OMERS pension plan, of which it's shared.
Right. Okay. Because not all employers cover 100% either.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
Once you decide what you want, then you can turn around and decide who pays
Yes, that's correct.
or what percentages you pay. So yeah. Okay. Thanks.
That's good information to have. Now, if there's other questions about that, we can take that now. It's also part of our discussion and summary of recommendations, so we certainly can go into that a little bit more in depth when we get to that point. That's up to, if other members have questions now, we can certainly do that or think about it and go back to refer to that as we carry on.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment because I was one of the ones that, was suggesting this, I guess the healthcare and the dental and things like that, but it's come out to be a lot more than what I would have expected it to be. Figuring that it could have been an add-on to a package that's already available, that sounds like a lot of money, to have to absorb a month.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that we could check to see what the cost would be if it was added on to what the other employees for the township are getting?
That is the cost. So it becomes just another category of the current municipal package. So this is the cost estimate from the benefit provider that the municipality already uses. So if we were going to add council as another group, because there are two different categories. There are currently, I'll use the term inside staff and outside workers. So there are two different classifications but they're all pooled in the same municipal structure. And so council would just be another classification that would be added in that context.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, as I said, we can come back to this too in our discussion of some of our recommendations.
If I may, Madam Chair, just for clarification, the cost estimates are provided based on the current incumbents. So the benefit provider actually rates and provides those cost estimates. So it is a factor of whether or not that individuals are single or have families, for one, and it's based on their age and a number of factors that way. So part of the increase in cost is as a result of our current council members are a little bit older maybe than some of the average staff members. So the cost to provide medical care tends to be a little bit higher in that regard. That's not the only reason, but again, and with life insurance and things like that, as you can appreciate, the older the members are, the higher the cost for life insurance and things like that. So there are some variables in there, and there may be some fluctuations. If this was to be implemented, there might be some fluctuations in the future if there ended up being members of council that came. Might not be quite as costly as if some of the members are older. It's just the reality of the business. Insurance tends to be more expensive for individuals to be covered the older you are.
Okay. Now, one thing that Richard also brought up, sorry, hand up. Richard, you're pretty well saying now, like the medical and dental is pretty well off the board, correct? Because you were pretty well the only one that said yes.
Yeah, I would say for me, it is now. I can't see how, taxpayers, when you start adding that amount of money on there, are going to see that as even reasonable.
For a part-time job, I agree, yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
I was
you
looking
were-
at it being an attracting device to try to get more people looking at counselors and mayor's jobs and things like that. What would make the job more attractive? And as we
Yeah.
all know, wages aren't necessarily it. I mean,
yeah,
you can give them a raise, but it's only a very short-term motivator. But things like benefits are something that are there to, that like it's worthwhile, especially if you've got a family or kids, stuff like that.
oh, absolutely. If I had a part-time job and they had a full-time, full benefits, like a
Yes.
package like that, hell, I'd be running very quickly too.
Yes,
But probably not for the right reason.
yes, you're right.
Yeah. You were also discussing like cell phones and stuff like that. Was that still on the table?
I'd like to further discuss that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I know in the jobs that I've had over the years, that if there was, that was considered a tool. Didn't matter whether as a tradesman, there's companies that provided your tools, there's companies that provided, an amount of money every year. But all the companies I had, they did, if you needed a cell phone as part of your job, they provided the cell phone. Or I looked at it and said, okay, how much do they use their cell phone as far as data? Because those can become costly, things like that. Should they have to absorb that type of cost to do their job? And that's
Yeah.
why I looked at the cell phone idea, but not that you would provide the cell phone, which is always a possibility. But just looking at,
The last thing I would want is 2 cell phones in my pocket.
yeah,
Yeah, and I could possibly see going with maybe some type of small stipend to help pay that portion of that. But
Yeah.
instead of offering a full cell phone, maybe a monetary amount each
I agree.
year, like
Yes,
such
I
as
agree.
it should be. I think it should be categories just like gas mileage.
yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And Martin, did you have a question there too?
Yeah, well, I guess comment, wouldn't want to have 2 cell phones. I know that, I guess if we were supplying a cell phone, would they use it for their own personal? We have a couple employees that we know quite well, and that's the only phone. They carry my phone, they use it, all 7 days a week, but they use it with reason, and, we're not municipal, we're a small business that can police that a little bit better maybe. So phone packages carry usually all the minutes you need in the long distance. That's almost a non-starter anymore. Maybe a little bit of data would be something that would be a conversation. To me, that would be the only place that I would see any top-up value maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and again, we can, when we go through all of our recommendations, let's kind of keep that in the back of our mind as an option. And just to clarify, Michelle, the benefits going back to the benefits that you've outlined, we wouldn't necessarily, if for some reason we decided we were interested in something, we could possibly pick and choose. It wouldn't have to be everything, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's something to keep in mind. Martin?
What about those who may have coverage already? Are they at the same level of cost? Because, some places, sometimes there might be people on there that have coverage elsewhere. So where do we fit into that? Are we paying for something they already have?
Yeah, there is, through you, Madam Chair, there is an option to opt out if you have coverage elsewhere. And then, of course, that would reduce the premiums accordingly. This cost was making the assumption that all 7 members of council would be covered, and therefore that was the costing. So, but yes, there is absolutely an option for individuals to opt out of it if they have similar types of coverage someplace else. and then the premiums would be adjusted accordingly.
Or I guess if they're 65 and their drugs are free, that would be one area that they wouldn't need to insure either.
There, yes, that's something that we would have to look into. I don't have all of the details on that. I do know that, yes, at some point, 65, there are, of course, there's dental, or sorry, there's drug coverage through the government. But I'm not sure that it covers all of the that some individuals may have, in which case there may still be a benefit to being able to be covered through this particular policy as well. I don't know that for certain. I'm speculating entirely. But yes, those are all things that we could look at doing. Again, this was just costed out based on 7 members of council and kind of making some assumptions. We would have, and that was the one thing that the benefit provider did indicate, that these are entirely estimates. If we were to move forward, then there would be a detailed costing that would be calculated based on, you know, the actual incumbents and who had it and who didn't, and who needed it and who didn't, and things like that. This was just for some generic information to be able to provide us with some discussion points for today.
Okay.
Just as a point of interest, as a senior, you don't get covered for everything for drugs. And my wife and I just got the Twinrex vaccine and also the shingles vaccine, and it was $500. And because the government does not cover vaccines. So we still have to go back for a booster shot for the Twinrex, and I don't know how much that's going to cost yet. So just gives you an idea. You don't get everything.
It makes the 407 sound cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I believe there are some employers who choose to only cover, even if there's benefit packages available. There are some employers who only choose to cover to a certain age, basically, as well, right? When some of those other, yes, it is incomplete, definitely, even after 65, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, perhaps we can, if that's okay for now, with our other council or with our other review committee members, perhaps we can move along to the discussion. And as I said, this can certainly come up some more as part of our recommendation and suggestions. If everyone's all right with that, we will move on to item E on our agenda, which is the discussion of summary of recommendations that we have made. Now, I just wanted to mention at the outset, because as everyone knows, 2 of our committee members, as in myself and Kevin, are living in the same household. So we wanted to make sure that we of course, we've talked about the background, same as we've talked about at these meetings, but we did go our separate ways to make our recommendations. So I just wanted to mention that we did not actually compile them together. We wanted to come up with our own ideas on that. So I'm not sure, Michelle, the best way to go forward with this is perhaps to just look at each item individually, see where we were, and have some discussion on each item. And the first one was actually the whether yes or no, whether we wanted to increase the base salary for mayor, deputy mayor, and councillors. And please, Michelle, jump in if you have a suggestion on the best way to go through this discussion, because there's lots to think about. There's lots to discuss, obviously.
Yeah, Madam Chair, maybe just a couple of preliminary comments, if I may. During the last meeting, we had identified a number of questions or suggestions that this committee wanted to be able to give consideration to. And I had agreed to compile all the information once all of you had formulated your opinions and provided that information. I will admit that it was, I struggled a little bit as well in trying to compile it and making it so that it was easier to go through. And you'll see in the agenda package, I made some decisions and separated out each of the kind of the questions and included and tried to color code the individual member responses to make it a little bit easier to read. But there was no magic to it. I simply copied and pasted the information that each of you provided and put it into the chart. So it is a little bit cumbersome, but I hope that it helps to at least give you an idea of where each of your thoughts were, but there is no magic to it. So if the committee thinks that there's a better way to review it or go through it, absolutely. Like I said, this was just my preliminary thoughts on trying to separate it out and make it so that all of your opinions could be looked at the same time.
Okay, thank you. No, I think it was very easy to see. So I appreciate your work at putting that together for us. Martin, did you, sorry?
What if we were to each go through and give you a real short answer as to how we kind of arrived at, how we got to where we are, at least how I got to where my comments are. And then if each of us kind of does that, I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but if we take a couple minutes and do that each, then I think we're going to have a better handle on where they're coming from.
Sure. You mean concerning each category, such as like the wage increase?
Yeah, so I'd like to speak to how I came to the wage increase for all three.
I suggest we do it alphabetical. We'll start with the Bs.
Yeah.
There you go. All right.
We can actually start with you, Martin. That's a good idea. I think we should sort of speak to our own recommendations. But if just for clarification, maybe we can just speak to the first item, the first question, which was increased base salary. Yep. And of course, part of that is percentage increase or flat rate increase. That's kind of part and parcel of that. So maybe if we just deal with that question first. And so Martin, go ahead and give us some little more background, if you'd like, on your responses there.
So I was trying to find the kind of the average wage and the median wage in Malahide or Southern Ontario or something to get a start with. And I actually stumbled onto the Good Wage Ontario. If you type that in, you come up with $62,000 annually, 62,654 annually. That was the 2019, I think, number and it took that was a sort of an average between low wages and six-figure wages as well. So I mean, it was a fairly broad range. I did read up on that a little bit. Then I took the spread from 2011 and I thought, and I did actually also find a piece of information of what wages were back there. And that's how I kind of arrived at a counselor. Between that and the fact of the information that they gave us, I said a counselor is 20% of a 20% part-time job. And that made a deputy mayor 28% and a mayor at 35% of a job. And then based on the Good Wage Ontario, came up with counselor at 12,530 and a deputy mayor at 17,793, and I actually got a mayor at 23,180, but I didn't want to drop from where we were, so I thought at least that does help to close the gap, and then wherever we end up with, then increase the inflationary. If we come up with something that works in 2020, then we should maintain that with an ongoing inflationary increase.
Inflationary increase on a percentage basis.
Yeah. Once we get going, once we get this established and get them settled down for 2020, then in 2021 we should be at the inflationary increase amount that is based on cost of living, or maybe based on the other township staff as well.
'Cause 1.5 is what the other municipal staff. I believe are Yeah.
For this year.
for this year,
Right.
right? And sorry, is good wage, so is that something, what, is it government or?
It was a broad range of it was a broad range of jobs all over all sectors of so I mean entry level positions started at 23,400 and experienced workers make up to 106,500, and then they had the average of all of that fell at this 62,000 number, which somehow I just felt that was are these, is this a $62,000 job they're doing 20% of? Are they $62,000 people? They're probably all of that, I guess. But anyway, that was where I started.
Good, thank you. And Kevin, yours?
Okay. Thank you, Martin. That was quite interesting. What I was looking at on my sheet, I'm afraid Richard is one that put the bug in my ear with your discussion 2 weeks ago about the percentage increase. So as you can see with my sheet, I did a little bit of number crunching, what the increase would be for each of the mayor, the deputy mayor, the councillors. And there's no way they're ever going to catch up with those figures. So you were talking about like a one-time dollar increase. And as I recommended was $500 for all, and then have a increase every 4 years, and 6 months before the election, give them the increase. That will give them incentive to run again, or for other people to run again too. So it may help a little bit that way. As I said, with a 1.5 increase for the mayor would be $354 raise. For a councillor, it'd be $178. That, to me, that doesn't balance out quite right. So the figures that you gave 2 weeks ago really sort of stuck with me. So that's what I decided for this time. I recommended an increase of $500 flat for all of them. And then every 4 years, an increase. Not sure what it's going to be. That's something that they will have to discuss. But as I said, 6 months before the election.
Any questions for Kevin? And
So that would be
sorry,
there'd be no increase until 6 months before the next term. They would sit down and they would decide what that flat rate increase would be for the
Yes,
next,
and I'm reckoning a $500 increase
over the
across
4
the
years.
board for everyone.
Yep.
And that'd be 6 months before the election.
Yep.
And that may help them decide if they want to run again,
Mhm.
and also more people to come in. I'm looking at the concept of trying to get new people to run, and to do it to keep our costs down quite a bit too.
Once again, that's $500 every 4 years, not $500 per year.
No, $500, I'd say every 4 years,
Okay,
because they all say we're not doing this for the money. And I agree with that. This is just a little extra incentive. And have a set date when the increase comes on. That's why I'm looking at 6 months before the election.
so I believe I'll go next just because I'm next on the sheet there. I think what I looked at, again, going back to the 1.5% increase, and sort of gave that to each mayor, deputy mayor, and councillors. I think that was, I was looking at it, trying to get it a little bit closer to what things would have been if salaries had been increased regularly. I did think perhaps that we should try to narrow the gap a bit between councillor and mayor, and definitely with a percentage increase. But of course, I'm I'm open to discussion on this. Obviously, with a percentage increase, I do see that gap growing a fair bit. Not that there isn't, there is very good reason, obviously, why the mayor and deputy mayor need to be making more. There's more involved, there's more responsibility, and so on and so forth. But I am wondering, the gap is just going to grow, especially if you apply, say, a 1.5% increase every year. I wondered about a flat rate increase. I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't really work the numbers enough to know whether something like I put down $700 like on an annual basis. I honestly don't know whether that's sustainable over the long term. I'm just, this is just very preliminary in what I was doing. And well, actually, I said a smaller ongoing annual increase, initial flat rate increase, and then a smaller amount for an annual increase every year. But that, I honestly don't know whether that's doable. And that's where I'm struggling with this kind of thing, to project how it's going to impact down the road. But that's kind of my feelings on where things should, the direction they should be going.
Now, you see, if you went from your office and came over to my office, I would have told you, but no.
Does anybody need clarification on that, or?
So Sue, you're looking at doing it, have something like what I said, have like an increase of a flat rate, but then you having an increase every year?
Every year.
Okay, and I was looking at every 4 years, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Richard, oh, sorry, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, just to comment that an increase, a flat rate increase every year of $500 to $700 is whatever number that's a high number. That's,
Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree.
We're going to go on an increase. It's going to have to be, I don't know, but it's going to have to be more in the area of probably a couple $100 at the councillor level, or it's going to be way out of proportion, unless we have a reason to say that councillors are putting in more time or doing, I guess I want, if this is the right time, I want to go all the way back to wonder, when I read the list from like 2-3 meetings ago of how much time they actually put in, I had trouble even deciding who was the mayor and who was the deputy mayor. And so are we paying the mayor and the deputy mayor more because it's more time consuming, or more because it's a job that requires that's a higher level paying job? Or is it a job of a better person that pays more, spends a similar amount of time? Or is it a person who spends more time? Does the deputy mayor, can somebody answer that?
So some of your employees are making more money than you are some days, right, Martin?
Well, yeah, no, but I want to know, mayor and deputy mayor make more money because they spend more time at it, or they spend a similar amount of time as a counselor, but it's a position that deserves a higher pay.
Richard, did you have a comment?
Yeah, my understanding is, and based on, I guess, my background from doing this over a number of years, it's strictly based on roles and responsibilities. And that's where you start. And because of the deputy mayor and mayor having roles and responsibilities that are greater than or in excess of what the counselors are, and one of those things is, if my understanding is correct, the counselors, as an example, make recommendations, but they don't have signing authority on something. Where a mayor, at the end of the day, the counselors would bring information to them, they would have their discussions, but somebody at the end of the day has to put their name, whether it's a policy, procedure, whatever, correct me, Michelle, if this is right, but the mayor would be, or deputy mayor would sign off to that. that's the kind of thing where when you get involved in that, their roles and responsibilities go up because my name is attached to it. So that's where you see the difference between the spread in wages between the mayor, say, to the councilors. It's not on how much they do, but also the roles and responsibilities that they carry.
Right. Kevin?
One question I wanted to ask. I'm pretty sure they do, but the county of Elgin also pays, they get a stipend from the, for the deputy mayor and the mayor?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. We're only looking at compensation for the mayor and the deputy mayor for the roles that they play in Malahide. Their roles on county council and the responsibilities for being county councilors are compensated through an additional wage that the county pays.
Okay, I was sure of that, but I just wanted to clarify it. That's all. That's one problem I have, because I know they do a lot of work by following some of the counselors on Facebook and some of the other meetings that they have. A lot of time is spent with the mayor and the deputy mayor on the county work. So I sort of was having problems trying to base how much work was county, how much work was Malahide. And that's why when I did mine, I said just a flat rate of $500 for all of them. And that should, as I say, instead of 1.5, that's more than they would get regularly at a 1.5 increase for 1 year. But yeah, I can understand your dilemma there, Martin, too. That's why I just wanted to clarify if they were getting how much. I guess we should have asked what the stipend that they were getting from the county, but that's not our job.
If I may, Madam Chair, when I sent the questionnaire out to them and asked them to comment on how much time they spent, I specifically indicated on Malahide business only. So
yeah.
the deputy mayor were aware of that, and they did not comment or include information on what they did for their county responsibilities in that questionnaire.
Okay, thank you.
So where are we? So I guess should we, so does that help, Martin, with the roles, responsibility?
I think that's important. Yes. Yeah.
Time
I'm
commitment.
glad to hear that.
Yeah, okay. So Richard, I think we're at you as far as your considerations for this.
Yes, one of the things I did is I took a look at the wages that they're making, all three of them, and looked at it based on the I guess the data that we've been given, and looked at what the highest rates were being paid for different municipalities and what were the lowest rates. And I looked at it and said, we're kind of in the middle of that, and felt that, okay, that's reasonable. So do we need to increase that? That was my thought behind it, was that we go ahead with a flat rate increase. Now when I did do some calculations originally, before this last increase, the wage difference was just a little over $4,700 between a mayor, a deputy mayor, and a councilor. Then all of a sudden, when we got the last increase, it was a percentage increase. And what happened is that difference went from 47 to 62.73 between the mayor and deputy mayor, and between I think it was the deputy mayor and the councilors, it went from 47.73 to 56.74. And that's once again just supporting the issue about not using a percentage increase and going with a flat rate. So what I looked at is said, a flat rate increase of say $300. And one of the things that I also did is Michelle gave us one of the spreadsheets you gave us, and I don't have it in front of me, but it showed if we were to have given, say, I think it was about approximately a 1.5% increase over the last number of years from 2011 up to approximately 2019. I just took an average of that, and it worked out to somewhere around $300 or slightly over. And so I thought, well, if we followed what we would have done, then we would go, I suggested an annual ongoing increase of $300 a year as a flat rate. So a one-time boost of $300 and then an annual increase of $300. And that was just based on those other calculations. So that's my input on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions? And it's interesting that I don't know how everyone else feels. This is just my personal opinion. I don't think we're all that far apart necessarily in what we're discussing and what we're looking at here. How to come to a resolution, or what might be, how we might move forward from this, that's kind of the next step. And I'm also wondering, like, if we do kind of through discussion come to an idea of what we'd like to recommend, is there a way then that we can see the implications down the road? I guess I'm asking you, Michelle. I don't.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. If the committee comes up with some general parameters based on your discussions today, for example, it appears at this point that everyone was kind of on the same page about a flat rate. So if that's the, you know, that's the decision of the committee, then you come up with some information in terms of what that flat rate might be. And then as we move forward on, we can put together some calculations for you that you can look at what the overall impact would be on an annual basis in the sense of annual budgeting and things like that. So we can certainly, staff, after we get some direction from the committee, we can certainly run some of those numbers and report back to the committee, and then you can, you know, make some fine-tune adjustments if is necessary, or if you're satisfied with the package at the end of the day, then we can do that. I won't be able to do that today during the meeting, but of course we can go back and we can give you that information, and we can even start to put together a little bit of a report and show you, you know, kind of a summary of the decisions that the committee has made or the direction that you're looking at going, and provide that information back to the committee at your next meeting. And then you can tweak it. And then ideally, if everyone's agreeable, after making those, you know, adjustments, you'd be in a position pretty much that you'd have your report and recommendations ready to go.
Ready to go. Mm-hmm. No, that sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
I think, Martin, as far as this, you may have been, you weren't recommending flat rate, but a percentage increase. And would you be willing to consider a flat rate, or are you wanting to proceed on the percentage?
Well, I think to come up with the proposed, I mean, that's not necessarily, and yet in some ways it is a flat rate. Or it's not a flat rate across the board, but it certainly it's not a percentage of what we had. I just kind of we're starting over, and that's when I used the good wage and then the amount of a percentage of a real job. I mean, the numbers we're working with here are very close. I was actually very surprised at how close we did come.
Thinking too.
The flat rate is in the long term, is a flat rate going to be looked at acceptable, because other employees in the same organization are worked on a percentage, and flat rate's going to be great for a year or two to get them back on the rails, but maybe the flat rate will be actually on paper it'll look like, you know, 2 or 3% when everybody else is getting 1.5%, and you know.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you, but again, if we do it the way that is specified, 1.5, that means the mayor is going to get, let's say, a $500 increase eventually, and the councillors are going to get $170 increase. So as you say, so it's going to continue doing that way. So if we do it the way which is flat, at least for this time, give them, you know, a raised rate now, or when the election comes up at that time, and then maybe do an increase, not a big one, but just do a small stipend increase every 4 years instead of the flat wage. Because as I say, it's if they do it by the percentage, as Richard said, it's just going to keep ballooning up for the ones that are higher up. Because I noticed at the beginning for the originally you, yeah, I don't want to get into that, but I'll just stop where I am right now. Yes.
And one of the things, and I'm looking at what Kevin has provided as far as information, you know, and I was looking at a $300 annual increase, but I could agree with what Kevin is saying. Instead of 300, jump to a 500 and do it on a, you know, do it on a cycle of 4 years before the election. It's more money, and I like that idea that hey, it's that little bit. I need to work harder. I've got to show the people that I'm worth that extra $500. I need to make sure that I'm doing my job and I'm doing it right. So yeah, I would be willing to go from $300 annually to a $500 every 4 years. It's still easier on the taxpayers, right? Which is us and everyone else to go that route. And yet still, I think if we, Michelle does the projections, we'll see what it's going to cost our taxpayers based on that $500 on a 4 year basis. Like I say, and it's an awful lot easier for them than $300 annually.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, and I was just, when Martin was speaking too, I wondered about but maybe this gets too complicated. I wondered about a flat rate increase now, and then that might sort of narrow that gap a little bit, but then a percentage increase, like I think you're right, Martin, is that most places use a percentage increase. I have a feeling, I could be wrong about that, Michelle, maybe you can speak to that, but I think a lot use a percentage increase. And so I don't know whether there's any way of doing a combination of flat rate increase now, but that, I don't know, I'm confusing even myself because I'm not sure exactly how workable that is. Or
if I may, Madam Chair, I think you're right. I think the vast majority of the structures end up with a percentage increase. The one thing I want to remind Council is that in 2019, when there was a higher jump in the mayor's and the deputy mayor's base salaries, it was as a result of income tax issues. So there was that increase to address the fact that the 1/3 tax exemption was removed. And so in order to ensure that the take-home pay was the same, because of income tax rules, the mayor's and the deputy mayor's salaries were high enough that we had to actually deduct income tax off of, whereas the councillor's salary on its own was not sufficient enough to have that much income tax. There was no income tax, I believe, that had to be deducted from deductions at source, essentially, is the reason why there was that bigger gap. So it did not mean that the mayor and the deputy mayor were taking home more money. What it meant was that in order to ensure they were taking home the same amount of money, the gross salary had to be increased because of the deductions at source that were necessary to be taken. So I just wanted to clarify that. But you're absolutely right. There was a much bigger gap that had to occur in order to ensure that everyone had the same take-home pay at the end of the day. So I don't know if that helps. And to answer your second question, you absolutely can propose a flat rate and a percentage increase, either a flat rate now and percentage later on, or you could propose a percentage increase now and a flat rate later on. All of those things are within the purview of the committee, any combination.
okay, thank you, Martin.
I think the mandate of this committee is to decide what the value of these jobs are, and the pay of these jobs, regardless of income tax, and because everybody pays tax. That's behind us. The job of this committee,
it doesn't seem a lot of people do.
yeah, I know, but the job of this committee is to decide what the value of it is, to make a fair remuneration so that they get paid reasonably and we attract some decent we do attract some people in the future. And then, and the other thought I had was that if we jump on a flat rate bandwagon, you know, the remuneration committee of 2040, are they going to say, gosh, the mayor and the deputy mayor, and they're way too close.
Yeah.
There's no spread there. What's
Yeah,
going
and
on?
Martin- and
We have a
Martin,
higher
you'll-
rules
then
and
Martin will say-
responsibilities according to Richard, and that spread ain't there.
And we'll still be on this committee saying, why did we think that, right?
Why didn't we think that way? You know? Yeah. So now Michelle will be retired, but we'll still be going.
That will still be on this committee doing
Yeah.
Zooms. Yeah.
So that's I think my feeling is to figure out what it's worth, figure out what that amount is. We're not looking at the amount of increase year over year for this year, but set it right so that pretty much from that point forward, the percentage is going to cover it again for a long time. We have to go back to percentage because I think at some point, base rate, because we can set $300. Well, what if there's deflation? Well, nobody gets a raise.
If
You
they
know,
already
we're gonna
get,
pay-
sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
they do already get an increase to cover essentially inflation. It's a percentage increase, is it not, based on what the rest of the employees get as well. So they are getting a wage increase to cover some of that. This is my understanding in addition to that.
Oh, I wasn't thinking that.
Oh, I wasn't thinking that either.
Do
Okay.
they not, and Michelle, get an annual increase right now?
The current council remuneration bylaw provides a clause that indicates that the councillor base wages will be increased at the same percentage as the municipal staff salary grid is increased. And that's the current bylaw. But I mentioned, I think at the very beginning of this process, is that doesn't necessarily have to continue. That's something that this committee needs to decide and put in place. So right now that's how it is. But if this committee decided that instead of having that annual increase, you were going to recommend something else, council is planning to pass a new bylaw that would incorporate any of the outcomes of this committee's discussions and their decisions with respect to those recommendations.
And just to clarify, I knew that was in the current bylaw, but yes, my recommendations were based on going forward. And so in other words, ignoring that current inflationary increase. And now, in spite of what I've recommended, I'm kind of leaning towards a combination of some sort. Like through our discussion, it seems that we feel that there's a bit of a gap there right now. Maybe that can be addressed with a flat rate increase, but then going forward, have some sort of a percentage increase to, because you're right, Martin. I mean, I think there are different roles and responsibilities that the mayor and deputy mayor are at a different level, and perhaps that inflationary increase should be also somehow, built into that. So I'm wondering whether we can do some sort of combination, but again, open to discussion. Martin?
Okay, well, I didn't realize we were using, because I thought if we're going to go with a $500 increase and we're not doing this inflationary thing, then they're falling behind, which we don't want to do. So I'm hoping we can come up with a number for each position, and then allow the inflationary number to be attached to that. And then if we beyond that want to do a recommendation of a number every 4 years, 6 months prior, if we wanted to do a small, then it would be a relatively small amount, and we could maybe throw a recommendation of $100, $200, $500. We could throw a recommendation, but ultimately that council at that time would, I think, then sit down and make a decision as to whether they want that to be part of that
Mhm.
prior to the vote. How's that?
Yeah, I agree.
You know, we could recommend and say, well, you know what, we're going to do inflationary, and let's throw a couple $100 a year at it.
Yep.
Subject to that council making that decision at every time. Or at least make the option open that they could make it, they could make it happen. And that way,
As
that would allow them to see that, yes, the job is getting a pay increase, but now the job is getting to be a larger job because there's more happening than, you know. Now, the other thing is that once you throw that $200 or $500 at it, we're going to be 1.5% on that next year, right? So that's going to really start ramping.
exactly. That's why I'm sorry. That's the
Sorry.
reason I like Richard's idea of having the flat rate. And they're going to have the, of course, if they say they have the percentage increase yearly anyway, if there is one,
Mhm.
that is out of our hands.
No, it's, sorry to jump back in, that inflationary increase that is in the current bylaw,
Yeah.
like our recommendation can be something entirely different.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily in there. Richard, sorry, I know you had your hand up. Do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, it's just, I guess when I took a look at it originally, knowing that we already had the inflationary portion in there, that's going to increase the gap on its own, you know, just by using that. And that's why along with having the flat rate increase, the rate increase doesn't increase the gap, but the 1.5% would. Now, here's something you could look at, maybe going back and saying 1.5, go back to say a 1%. And then go to a $300, say, annual increase. So what you're doing is you're getting a balance between slowing the gap increase by going to a smaller percentage, and yet then giving them a raise on an annual basis of, say, $300. It keeps them moving ahead with the rest of the municipalities and still keeps it attractive.
Do we have to go, are we allowed to do that, the percentage? Michelle? Are we allowed to set the increase?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, you can put together whatever package that you think is appropriate. I just pulled up the terms of reference again, just to remind myself. So the mandate of this group is to establish a compensation package for council members for this term of office. So this would be for 2020, 2021, and 2022. So you're looking at establish something. Now, that doesn't mean that whatever you put in place wouldn't be something that would continue to go forward. But what you need to think about is the remainder of this term of council. And as Martin, I believe, indicated, you need to establish what you believe is a base rate, whether that's done whether you decide that the current amount is sufficient, whether you decide that there needs to be adjustments to the current base rate, and then what needs to happen for the next couple of years going forward. So for and if there would be an increase for 2021 or 2022, whether there wouldn't be, all of those things, whatever package you decide is appropriate is all, it's whatever you decide is the right way to go. You can absolutely have a flat rate and a percentage increase. You can have one or the other, but essentially you need to decide what is the appropriate base salary for each of those positions. And then should there be annual increases or not? And how should those annual increases be made if you decide that you think that's appropriate? As Kevin had suggested, he's suggesting that annual increases don't need to be made, a one-time increase just before the next election. And all of those things are all options for you. It's whatever package you think is going to provide a fair wage for members of council today, as well as over the next 2 to 3 years going forward.
That's good clarification to have.
Thank you.
I need to sleep on it.
Well, and earlier I said, could we give them a flat rate now? and then, you know, continue with inflationary increases or yeah, the inflationary percentage increase. Or kind of the flip side of that is if we're interested in giving them basically a percentage increase now, and the flat rate increase, if we want to do that, could come, you know, as Kevin was suggesting, just once every whatever, like 6 months before the next election or whatever.
6 months before the election.
Yeah.
And that's just set the time on that.
But Richard?
Yeah, one thing I'd just like to suggest is one of the first things I think we need to establish based on what Michelle was just saying is the base rate itself right now enough? Do we need to adjust the base rate? That's the place to start. And, you know, like I say, when I took a look at, you know, the comparison between all the other municipalities, we're somewhere in the middle between the lowest and the highest. You know, so are their roles, responsibilities any different than what our councillors and mayors are? They would be, because they're spelled out by the government of Ontario, their roles and responsibilities are the same. The size of the districts or whatever would change, the number of people they're dealing with would change, and that will have an effect on it. But is the base wage effective? If it is, we think it's all right, then the next step to move is, do we just say, yes, we think it's okay where it is now? Then the next step is to look at, if it is okay, then do they need a catch-up raise? Yes or no? If it's okay where it is now, then they don't need a catch-up. We don't need to give them $300 or $500 this year. Then we have to decide whether moving forward, what kind of increase should they get on an annual basis? Is it a percentage? Is it a flat rate? And how much makes it reasonable enough that they're going to stay at least where they are with the other municipalities, still make the job look good enough that it's going to help continue to attract people and not drive them away and say, I don't want to do this for that price. You know, so that's just my suggestions. Make it a little bit easier rather than looking at all the things all at the same time.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And maybe we should start there. Now, based on the recommendations that we had put forward, I think everyone, Martin, you had actually increased the base salary for deputy mayor and councillors. Kevin and I had increased the base salary for all of them. And Richard, you had not increased the base salary. You were suggesting, or
No,
did
I put in there a flat rate increase of $300
and that's
to
like
add to the base salary.
on the base salary.
On the base salary, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Then an annual increase beyond that. So that's part 2 of the.
Right. So you believe in, you're saying let's increase the base salary by 300. I was saying I increased it more than that, but again, I'm willing to discuss that. But Kevin was increasing it by
500.
500, and Martin, you were increasing it by a percentage, but the numbers are, which except for the mayor, but the numbers are not all that different, as Michelle pointed out earlier.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe we could establish. So I think we're pretty close in that regard. I think that we're saying yes, let's increase the base salary, and I guess it's a matter of how much we want to look at.
I guess that's the question now. Can we
300, 400, or
agree?
500?
All of us agree that we want to increase the base salary.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Well, and I'm in agreement with that. The only, Martin, I think you had just basically, and I understand where your calculations came from, but I think it was just the mayor that was, you were leaving as is.
Yeah, and I felt pretty good about 2 of the numbers, but the mayor's number, I was actually questioning myself, but I thought, well, this is the formula that I used. I'm not going to veer from it. I'm going to present it. There it is. The mayor's one, I recommended to leave. I'm not, you know, if we wanted to do a few hundred or 300 there, I could live with that too.
It
certainly
sure
wasn't
smooth.
gonna
It
take
would
down.
definitely smooth things over.
Oh, I definitely would smooth things over, yeah. Other than that, I think that's what we need to do. Get these,
Yep.
get these numbers for 2020. Let's get that resolved. Let's get
Yep.
that solved.
So we have to decide if it's 300, 400, or 500 as
So
a
we're
base range.
sorry, we're all in agreement then that we want to increase the base wage. That's the first step, right?
Yep.
Correct.
So we're all in agreement there. Then the next thing is how much?
Mhm.
So sorry to jump in there. Michelle, do I need an actual motion just for that portion, or should we have a motion of increased?
Yeah, my suggestion, Madam Chair, through you, is that establish what you think the base salary should be, and then maybe do a motion at that point. And then motion again for what you're going to decide to do for annual increases, if there are going to be annual increases.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted a clarification to make sure I wasn't missing something. So yes, I think it sounds like we're all in agreement. Let's increase the base salary. And so now what are we looking at? Where we had 300, we had 500, and what does yours actually work out to be, Martin?
And Madam Chair, just through you, you don't necessarily have to give the same increases to everyone. So I know that there, you know, should it be 300 or 500, 700? You don't necessarily have to do that. You just need to decide what the base salary should be for each position. And they may be that they increase all the same, but that isn't necessarily
Right.
have to do it that way.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Well, and that's kind of
I didn't
essentially
mean to muddy the waters further.
Yeah.
Well, that makes it
Essentially-
easy.
Yeah, with Martin, I can hear the gears turning from here.
You want it.
Well, and I believe that's what Martin has done, and he's
Yeah.
decided in his mind what, you know, an appropriate wage should be, and they're not increased by all the same amounts. If you look at his calculations, he's done a different type of
Wow.
basis. Others have simply said, yeah, let's do it by 300 for everyone or 500 for everyone or whatever. But there is no right or wrong. Again, you have to determine what the base salary should be. How the committee decides what that is entirely up to you.
Okay. You can stir the pot up, Michelle.
Martin?
I'd like to make a recommendation that we go, councilors go 500, deputy 400, and mayor 300. That'll close the gap.
I agree. That's the exact figure I have down here now.
Yes,
Richard?
I agree.
I agree.
My gosh, that was
That's easy?
a lot easier than I
Wow.
anticipated.
Yep. No, that's.
See, that's why I
perfect.
didn't want to be chair. I didn't know where to go.
Okay, so,
You want that in a motion?
Martin, do you want to make a motion to that effect then? Is that what you basically have just done?
Yeah. Okay. Then I'd like to make the motion that the wage for 2020 would be increased by $500 for the councilors, $400 for the deputy mayor, and $300 for the mayor
On the base salary.
on the base salary, on the base 2019 salary.
And so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I question something here. Michelle, are we current 2020? Is that actually current 2019 or is current 2020 2020?
That's actually current 2020.
So are we proposing
This
2021?
committee- However, this committee has the purview to make recommendations for adjustments for this year. If you think that that's appropriate, there was at January 1, 2020, this year, there was an inflationary increase of 1.5% that was added to the 2019 wage. So there was an inflationary increase. So However, if you feel that that wasn't an appropriate increase amount for 2020, you have the ability to make recommendations for an adjustment still in 2020. The council may or may not decide to agree with that, but that's something you can do. Quite frankly, this committee unfortunately was anticipated to meet much sooner in the year and have made adjustments and recommendations that would have hopefully been in place sooner. However, if you're comfortable with the current wage at this point, or at least leaving things the same this year, recognizing we're getting later on in the year, then I would suggest then you look at doing something for 2021. But it makes no difference one way or the other. You can make recommendations for both, for this year as well as next year.
We would
Again,
not,
just to muddy the waters further.
well, no, that's good. No, this is all good. We would not normally go retroactive because the budgets are set, and I mean, that would mess things
It's
up.
not muddy, it's murky.
Murky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the adjustments that you're suggesting here aren't substantial, so that, and because of the number of council members, it's not huge dollars you're talking about. So for example, let me give you a scenario with staff. If a collective agreement expired at the end of the year and we're looking at negotiating a new collective agreement, if that collective agreement hadn't been resolved before January 1, had a new dollar amounts, there would be retroactive payments made to staff once the new collective agreement was negotiated and signed. So it's not uncommon to deal with salaries and wages accordingly. Council not is typical because usually they make decisions based on, earlier on in their terms and things like that. So it isn't unheard of, but it's not necessarily commonplace to make retroactive adjustments for council. But that is something that this committee can recommend if you feel that that's necessary, or you can just make a significant adjustment for 2021 to deal with the situation going forward, whichever your preference is.
Richard, did you have a question?
Yeah, can I suggest that we stick with the 2021? And my reason being is COVID wasn't the responsibility of the mayor, deputy mayor, councilors, right? And that's what delayed the process coming on. Otherwise, this could have been dealt with a lot earlier in the year. And now we're late, but it's not their issue. So that's why I would recommend that we stay with these increases right now, being 2020.
2020.
Yes,
2020.
right now for this year, current year.
And paid retroactively,
Yes,
if we were to propose that and pass it.
yes.
So Martin, we were kind of in the middle of a motion on the floor, but maybe if we can clarify that to include the year.
Okay, so motion to increase the wage from the base salary, 500 for councilors, 400 deputy mayor, 300 for the mayor for the year 2020. And
To be paid retroactively.
to be paid retroactively, because otherwise it isn't going to be any.
That would happen anyways, Madam Chair. So if there's if the council accepts the recommendation that is being suggested at this point, then it would become retroactive anyways, because it would be the wage for 2020, and then there'd be an adjustment made that would amount for that for the entire year.
Okay, thank you. So that motion is on the floor. Is there a seconder? Kevin?
Yes.
And can we have a vote? Is everyone in favor? Okay, that motion is carried.
Yes.
So then the next item, Madam Chair, would be to decide whether or not you wish to also have for the years 2021 and 2022, which is the 2 years left in this term of council, whether or not you wish to also have annual increases for those 2 years going forward. And if so, what those increases should be.
Okay, so just quickly, do we think there should be an annual increase? Yes or no? Martin?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
And Kevin?
No.
Okay. And I was leaning towards yes. And so Kevin, I believe you were looking at
I'll,
your recommendation, sorry, go ahead.
okay, my recommendation is that we have an increase every 4 years. I know it's not a lot, 300, 400, and 500, but have it every 4 years and have the increase 6 months before the election automatically. And that is it.
And my only concern with that is because remember, there's not necessarily an inflationary increase built into that, right?
We haven't discussed that yet.
No. Well, that's what we're discussing now,
Okay.
right? Because if you say that, then we've agreed to that increase in the base salary, but now we're looking at annual. And so you can't assume that that inflationary increase is already there because this is what we're deciding.
Right.
So, correct, Michelle? Yeah.
Yes.
So Richard, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that I agree that we need to now make the decision. Do we agree with a annual percentage increase and an annual flat rate increase? Or do we agree to leave the annual percentage increase in place as it is? And then go, as Kevin said, once every 4 years, topping it up with an additional $500. To me, that would make more sense if you were going to do that.
Exactly. That's what I was speculating. We're still going to have the 1.5 increase already.
Yes.
And instead of doing an increase each year, just doing one every 4 years.
And I would agree with that, Kevin.
Yeah.
Okay. So Martin?
I think we need to break these out to, do we want to do an inflationary increase year over year? Let's answer that question. Let's vote on that. Let's decide on that. And then we know that they're covered inflationary. And then if we decide, then we can have a further discussion later that says, do we want council to have the option to, and I think it should be an option, to make a small amount of bait available. And we'll talk about that when we get to it.
6 months.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah. So what I was sort of proposing was either a 1% or a 1.5%. They get that increase every year, but have this monetary increase, the flat rate, every 4 years. That's it. And have it 6 months before the election as bait.
So, so on the question of an inflationary increase, so are we,
I can make you a motion.
okay, make a motion.
I make a motion that we would continue to pay the inflationary increase annually as per the Malahide staff.
At 1.5.
Well, that's inflationary.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's
Not 1.5. That's inflationary, whatever it happens to be. Yeah.
Yep.
So they get paid inflationary increase annually.
Yep.
The end.
Okay, so your motion again is that you recommend that they have an annual inflationary increase in line with the Malahide municipal staff.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Richard? And all in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. So now we have agreed on a base salary increase and inflationary percentage increase. One more item is, would we also like to recommend, and Martin, I do like your word option, because that maybe gives them a bit of flexibility. Would we like to consider, as Kevin has suggested, an optional flat rate increase near the end of the 4 years?
Madam Chair, may I
Sure.
in here just for a moment, and this might be overstepping my role at this point, but one of the challenges that council has faced in the past with respect to setting its remuneration is that it's a political situation, and it's somewhat challenging to be able to come forward and make a recommendation to increase your own wage, which is one of the reasons why this committee was struck. So if I can chime in on behalf of council's position, if you feel that it's appropriate to add another top up just before the election to kind of, again, look at increasing the base overall, then I think that if that's what the decision of the committee, if you feel that's appropriate, my suggestion would be that that should be your recommendation rather than leaving it as, quote, an option. Either you believe that's appropriate or it isn't, because allowing it as an option, there's still that aspect that sits in the back of council's mind saying, well, maybe they didn't feel it really was justified or it wasn't, and maybe we shouldn't increase it, and maybe we should. It's just very challenging from a political perspective, which is one of the reasons why this group was struck in the first place, is either you feel it's appropriate and you should recommend that, or not worry about it and let the next council determine whether or not there needs to be an increase.
Sure. Kevin?
First of all, Martin, I like the word option, but I especially like the word bait. Can I make a recommendation?
I have a comment.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
let Martin, sure, go ahead, Martin.
So my comment to that is, and I understand what you're saying, Michelle, but they are not making a decision on their pay. They're making a decision on the next council's pay. They should make the decision in enough time so that they are making a decision that the next council's pay will be $100 or $200 or $500 more than this council's making, so that they're not deciding their own pay.
So just so I'm clear, if I can understand, so your suggestion would be, as the term of council is typically towards the end of the year, so it would be a base rate increase that would come into effect the following term, even though they'll make the decision 6 months before.
Correct.
Okay, I misunderstood. My apologies.
Okay.
And then if it's an option, then I think then it's not like they're making their own decision as much, because at that point, none of them will have decided whether they're going to run. None of them will have their name on a ballot. This should be done in the summer or whatever, or like it should be done 6 months before the election date there.
Yeah, and they don't even know if they'll get in, I suppose. So.
They don't know if they're going to get in. They don't know if they're going to run
Yeah,
necessarily.
it would even be before nomination day, so. Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Decided before
That
nomination.
covers
day.
Kevin's issue. That takes care of, I think it does, Kevin, that by having it in for the next council takes care of your issue.
Yeah.
All we have to do then is now determine, we've agreed then to an increase every 4 years or annually?
Every four, I suggest every 4 years.
Every 4
Yeah.
years.
I think every year that amount is too high.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And as I say, I honestly don't think, if we make it too high, I doubt very much council will actually go for it. Because again, this is going to be an election issue.
Well,
And,
we do.
Well, no, I'm just saying, when the press puts this out and says, well, they want this, if it's going to be like a large increase, it's not going to look good. If it's a small increase and the reason why we're doing this, I think it'll be more palatable. That's why I'm saying every 4 years, because then it really won't be as big of an issue. And I think it's fair, because a lot of them say they don't want to raise. This is not too much. It's not too less. I think 5, 4, and 3, once every 4 years would be sufficient.
And we have just recommended as well that there is going to be an annual inflationary.
That inflationary rate, yes, of course.
So that's actually already in there. So we're
Exactly.
looking. This is just gravy in the pot. Another one-time thing well, again, we're only looking at this term.
Mm-hmm.
We can't really say every 4 years because we're just looking at this term of council. But we could say that it would, be a possible increase a number of months before the election, but come into effect for the following term.
So that last part would just be a recommendation then.
Is that kind of where we're at? Richard, did you have?
Yeah, I think we've taken care of this year. We've already taken care of the inflation portion of it. Now what we're saying is, I looked at it and said, if everybody, as you proposed, Kevin, it would be for the next council being voted in.
Yep.
If you go $500 across the board, so there's no difference between the mayor, deputy mayor, and council. Go $500, that works out, all it is about $125, for a year, over the 4 years, what the increase would be, which is not substantial.
No.
Really. It'd be a reasonable amount, but still at a $500 lump sum, it's still a nice thing.
Exactly.
So yeah, I would go, I would agree with that $500. You do it once every
Across the
4
board?
years to kick in with
Okay.
the new council coming in.
Okay.
So Martin, are you?
I guess, are we deciding we're doing that for every 4 years or just for this 4 years, just for this upcoming council? Or every 4 years?
I'd say every 4 years until someone disagrees with us.
No, I
Yeah.
agree.
And yeah.
And council can always disagree with it at that time.
Oh,
If they
never.
choose.
It'll never happen.
Oh, okay.
Is that appropriate to put that in for every 4 years? Michelle, is that? all right?
I think that that's a recommendation this committee could make. Again, your mandate was to come up with stuff for right now, but I think if you have some suggestions on how to move forward, I think that it's appropriate to include that.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to
Sorry,
that?
and of course, this decision is actually to reflect an activity to be taken by this council during this term. So I think it's appropriate.
Okay, no, good enough. Would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
Richard, I suggest you, because you put the bug in my ear.
Yeah, I would like to move that going forward, that we take and we provide a $500 increase for the mayor, the deputy mayor, and the councilors as a one-time payment in the beginning of the new council year, So that would be 2023, I think. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's when that would become effective.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, motion is on the floor. Do I have a seconder for that?
Before I do, one question. Was that going to be retroactive 6 months before the election?
I don't believe
no.
that was what was put on the floor. I think it was to come into effect for the new council.
correct.
And I'm fine with that too. I just thought maybe a little bait for the next election, but I'm game with that. I'm fine.
But it is, because it's coming into effect just before the next election.
2023. Okay.
The decision
And-
would be made, so the new incoming council members, anybody wanting to run would know what their salary would be and that there would be that increase applied.
Thank you. Okay.
So is there a seconder for that? Kevin or Martin, did you have a question or?
Yeah, comment or question. So would council still have to review this every 4 years, and it would come up on their agenda to discuss it and approve it?
My understanding is that what the committee has indicated so far is that you would like the council to give consideration 6 months before the next election to increasing all of the base rates to become effective for the new council by $500. So the decision has not necessarily been made with the decision that council is going to make in another month. They would talk about it 6 months before the election date and decide whether they think, given the existing circumstances at that moment, whether or not they wanted to increase the base salaries for the incoming council. That's how I understood the intent of the motion.
And I understand it that way as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not a given that the salaries will increase in 2023 for sure. That's something council will have to decide in, April or May of 2022.
Okay.
Seconder.
So Martin seconds that. Richard made the motion, I believe, and Martin seconds it. And is everyone in favor? Okay. So I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that that is the salary.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you, I think you're on to whether or not you want to give consideration to having additional meeting pays for meetings other than regular council meetings.
And on this one, I'm just going to summarize because it's all in a nice little summary there. Three of us said no and one of us said yes. So, so Richard, do you want to comment?
Yes, and I guess what I looked at, and once again, if there's clarification, Michelle, my understanding is there's meetings that they go to that they're not paid for. And I guess I look at it from anybody that is currently working in a job. Why should they have to go to work and not get paid for it?
If I may, Madam Chair, the way this structure is, the compensation structure is set up currently, is that the base salary is included to compensate members of council for all meetings that they attend.
Okay.
Period. Whether they be regular council, whether they be committee meetings, whether they be outside boards or commissions, whichever the case. Any meetings that they're required to attend, their base salary is intended to cover. So in any particular given year, that number could fluctuate depending on which additional boards and committees they participate in. And it fluctuates by member of council as well, because some members of council sit on more committees and outside boards than other members of council. That's just the reality. So this is intended to, this item on the agenda is whether or not you think for things outside of regular council business, whether or not there should be an additional amount paid. There is no right or wrong answer. That's just currently there is no additional allocation. And there's been some suggestion by some members of council that maybe there should be consideration given. There was a summary that was provided to you of some of the extra committees that members of council sit on. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you think it's appropriate that their base salary is sufficient. You've just increased it. You've given consideration to what the base salary should be. And do you think that there needs to be any additional pays for attending other meetings other than regular council meetings and doing the regular council business?
And as you said, Michelle, the current wages that they're getting are supposed to cover those additional meetings.
That's the philosophy of the
Okay.
current structure.
Then
But that doesn't mean that's the right one. That's just how
Okay.
it's been set up. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth.
Okay.
Richard, did you have another comment or?
What I'm doing is reconsidering based on the clarification that I would be okay to move it back to a no then.
I sort of, just to clarify what I said when I said in my comments, I didn't think it should change. Because, and you remember in my original recommendations, I had actually suggested a little bit more of an increase, but I'm good with what we've decided. I'm thinking that because we have looked at some increases that I'm hoping is sufficient to cover council meetings and the other meetings that they do have to attend. So that's where I was with that.
I'm in agreement.
Okay. So do I need a motion on this specific one as well, Michelle? Is that best?
I would suggest that's probably appropriate. So just the motion would be that no action be taken to implement meeting pays.
Okay. Does somebody want to move that? Richard?
I move that no action be taken on increasing meeting pays.
And seconder? Kevin? All in favor? Okay, we all agree on that. So moving forward, this was the annual mileage stipend, I believe. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes.
So currently, for 2020, the mayor and the deputy mayor receive $849.96 as a mileage stipend, and councillors 570. So again, looking at our responses, which we've kind of got,
I can speak to what my thoughts were.
we've got a yes and some no's. So sure, Martin, go ahead.
Well, if we were paying $849 for a long time, and I don't know how long, I did even talk to Diana on this, and my calculation was that we were buying for $849, which we were buying 1,648 kilometers. And if that's true, then 1648, then times 59, which is 58 or 59 is the CRA amount that's regulated. And so I went all the way back to those years and said, mayors are driving 1648 and the councillors 1111. And then if we take it to a new number, a current number, because that was based on 42 cents or something. Now we're at 58. Actually, I used 59, but so that's how I got to where I am.
Sure. No, thank you. Can I just clarification before we go further in the discussion? Because now I'm getting myself a little confused. So there's an annual mileage stipend, and then the next question is the mileage reimbursement. So if you can just clarify, Michelle, how that differs. So when would they just claim mileage reimbursement as opposed to?
Yeah, again, the annual mileage stipend is intended to compensate members of council for driving on council business within the municipality, within the geographic boundaries of the municipality. We had mentioned before that there are occasions when members of council have to travel outside of the municipality to attend conferences, meetings, functions, and things like that. So the mileage cost per kilometer is able to be claimed for events and meetings that they attend outside of the geographic boundaries of the township. The stipend is intended for regular travel within the municipality.
Sure, and I apologize, you did, now it's coming back to me, but that was a couple of meetings ago, I think, in my defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
it's a lot of information to absorb in one.
That's right. So if they had a meeting in London, for example, or a conference or whatever, and they were required to attend that, they would actually get reimbursed for the mileage per kilometer on that basis.
Correct.
But the annual stipend is just for within the municipality.
Correct.
Okay. So how's everybody feeling? So Martin, you've argued that, and I can see your point, quite frankly. I think I was concerned about additional costs, actually, but I don't. Again, I'd almost have to see with what we've suggested for some salary increases, not that it's huge or enormous or anything, but I am in the back of my mind keeping in mind the effect on taxpayers and how this is going to play out that way.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think there's two things to keep in mind. One is a salary, and there's salaries, which you've already addressed. This essentially is a reimbursement of expenses. So while there is a cost to the taxpayers for any of these mileage payments, I think it's important to recognize that it's somewhat different. So the council members have actually had to put out their own personal finances in the sense of use of their vehicle and gas and insurance and all of those things. So this is a reimbursement of expenses. The only difference is that one, it's a flat rate, and then the other, of course, is based on a kilometer per basis. So, but I think that the philosophy behind them are two different things, and I think you need to think about them in those contexts as well. You're absolutely right, though. There's the whole, it's all a cost that has to be paid by the ratepayers. But I think that, you know, the other thing to remember is that council members shouldn't also be negatively impacted financially as a result of being a council member either.
Oh, no, not at all. Not, I definitely.
So, and that's why I like to consider these things as two different scenarios.
No, you're quite right. And and that's a very good point. No, they shouldn't be out of pocket, and not at all. But Richard?
Yeah, based on the discussions we've been having, if I take a look at the number for the gas mileage lump sum, how long has that been in effect? Is it that back to 2011 as well?
Yeah, and actually earlier than that, I believe.
Okay, based on that in itself, I'd have to say, because I originally said, no, I didn't think they should be looking at an increase. And I'm going to reverse my decision on that, and I do believe that they do. And if you take a look at, say, back to 2011, how much just the cost of gas has increased. Take a look at how much it costs now to get a vehicle repaired. You know, where at one time you could go in at $40 or $50 an hour to a garage. Now you're talking upwards of over $100 an hour to go in. You take a look at the cost of a pair of tires, oil changes, all those things have increased dramatically. And once again, we're asking these people to use their own personal vehicles. Insurances haven't gone down at all. That there needs to be something that covers those costs. They shouldn't have to absorb all that. So to go up to the CRA rate, if we did like the calculations that Martin did, and just take that to 58 or 59 cents a kilometer times what you've got, and then it bumps up from there. And it's the same as the mileage for the other meetings. It's easy then to use that same mileage rate that the CRA uses based on additional mileages to other meetings and things like that. Like I say, automobiles nowadays cost a lot of money to maintain and to purchase, you know, if they wear out. And they're wearing their vehicle out every day that they drive on a municipal business.
Well, that's a very good point. And I'm kind of thinking the same now. After discussion and clarification, I'm more apt to go with Martin's suggestion there. Martin?
I see that. I use 59 cents, although I did just Google it here now too, and it's 58 cents. I'm actually, I don't want to overpay. But I do want to be fair.
Why rock the boat, right?
And now, and also that number, if you were to drive over 5,000 kilometers, which they're not, if they were driving over 5,000 kilometers, that we would pay 58 cents and then 52 cents for anything over 5,000. I mean, we could go to anywhere between 52 and 58, I guess, would be a number that we should be looking at. Even though they're not doing 5,000, 52 it's not bad scratch either, but it certainly recognizes that they're doing
52 cents is certainly higher than the current allocation or kilometer basis in the sense of 45. So I think that is probably, as Martin said, a reasonable step towards, and then hopefully there would be ongoing increases as you know, periodic as council moves forward. In this particular case, it's been many, many years since they've given themselves any increase at all.
Okay. No, that's I appreciate that clarification. Is someone ready? Sorry, Martin, go ahead.
And it was actually, Richard had made a point about insurance a couple meetings ago, and I stumbled into something that talked about, it was something that came up about car insurance, and it actually said when you're driving for your employer, if you're using your car to get to work, that's acceptable. But if you're using your car for work, that becomes less acceptable. And so I think these guys are using their car to get to work, even if work happens to be at Avon looking at a bridge or something, that's still getting to work. So I think the insurance thing, I feel very comfortable about them using their own car, even though they have their own insurance. I don't think their insurance company can never come back to them and say, you're not delivering pizza, you're not using it for work. So just want to bring that forward.
No, that's important. Is anyone ready to propose a motion for this? No?
Sure.
Martin, go ahead.
Go ahead, Martin.
That we would increase and I guess maybe using the numbers that I had there I'm going to do that differently. Increase the mileage stipend for mayor to $900, and the deputy mayor $900, and the councilors at $750.
750, I'm sorry?
Yes, $750.
That's a fair bit more than what you had suggested.
Oh, sorry, not the 900, 900, and 600. I'm sorry, 900, 900, 600.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to increase the annual mileage stipend for mayor to 900, deputy mayor to 900, and councilors to
100.
600?
Yes.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Richard?
Yes, I second it.
And all in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. And then kind of part and parcel of that is increasing the mileage reimbursement per kilometer. And so I guess if anyone is interested, and yes, I think we're all interested in increasing it per kilometer. It's just a matter of how much, or what we should, what that kilometer rate should be. Martin?
I think I'd like to see it go at least 52.
52. Anybody else? Richard, I think you had suggested 58, as that is the CRA rate.
I would agree with the 52. It's a good median.
Okay. Kevin?
I concur. I was going to go 55, but I for this term, 52 is good.
Okay. So does somebody want to make a motion on that? Kevin?
Kevin.
I'd like a motion that the increase of mileage reimbursement per kilometer, doesn't make sense. Anyway, to 55 cents.
52, I think is.
52, sorry, 52.
52 cents.
It was next to my 55. It was next to my 55 that I forgot to cross out. Okay. Increase mileage reimbursement per kilometer. Yeah, that's got to change. Anyway, the next term.
To 52 cents per kilometer.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor. A seconder for that? Richard?
Yes.
And all in favor? Okay, that one is carried. So we're progressing. I do just want to be conscious that it is almost 12. I don't know, however, we only basically our last, hang on, that was increased.
You only have 2 items left, Madam Chair, of which I think most of the participants feel similarly, so it may not take very long for discussions.
Which is the, oh, yes, sorry,
The per diem rate for meetings or is the next item that the committees had on the agenda to discuss, and then the following was whether or not there should be any additional benefit.
Additional benefits. Okay, So, increase per diem rate for meetings, conferences, and we've got a couple of no's and a couple of yeses. So where's everybody feeling on that? Now, again, maybe just for clarification, has this been changed at all? It hasn't been changed for a long time, right?
No, that's correct.
So, yeah.
I
Rich,
can go if you'd like, because I was one of the ones that said I felt that they needed an increase, and I just took a look at the different municipalities, and the top rate being paid is $238.29. And I thought, you know, at 165, and once again, it's been a long time since there's been any increase at all. Once again, the cost of doing all these things for a counselor is increasing as well. And I thought, you know, if we bumped that up to something like $180 from the 165, it's not substantial, but enough to cover some extra costs.
hey, Martin?
Is that a motion, Richard? Because I could live with that. I could live with 180.
Okay.
Okay. I could too, actually.
Same here.
Okay,
Okay.
Richard, make that motion.
Okay, I would like to move that we increase the per diem rate that is currently $165 a day to $180 per day going forward.
Seconder for that, Martin? And all in favor? Okay. That's great. So, yes, I believe the last item are the additional benefits that we were considering.
Mhm.
And yes, and Richard, maybe I know you were looking at considering, we had talked earlier about some of this, you were looking at possible cell phone data coverage and that kind of thing.
Yeah, now that we've got the data in the quotes, some information that we can use to make a decision, that I would have to say the benefit package in itself, I would say no. It's just too much, I think, for everybody. The cell phone costs and stuff like that, without knowing how much additional cost or how much do they use, you know, say things like data, are they doing lookups and searches on their phones? And if it's not a lot, then maybe it's not reasonable to consider it. You know, I mean, in this day and age, let's say pretty much everybody has a cell phone. Some of us don't like to use them, but that's another question. So I could drop that off and say, based on the cost that we're looking at, I think we've done a good job in the proposals we have in increasing the wages and stuff, that I would drop the benefit portion off it.
Okay. And should I have a motion, Michelle, to that effect?
Yeah, I would suggest, just because it's on the agenda, again, there be no action to include any benefits or cell phone cover or cell phone stipend in the final compensation package.
Okay. So can someone just make that motion, please? Richard?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we do not, or we exclude additional benefits from the packages going forward. Something like that. You can refine the words.
Mm-hmm.
And seconder for that? Kevin? And all in favor? Okay. So those were all the various recommendations and suggestions. Wow. we got through quite a bit today, I think. So I guess we have next steps, perhaps, and next committee meeting.
Yeah, Madam Chair, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, if the committee wishes, I can compile the information that you have decided so far today, and I can put some costings to those, come back with that information at your next meeting, and then I can, based on some of the discussions that we've had today and previously, I can start to put together a draft report for the committee, which includes that information, as well as I'll make an attempt to start some of the rationale for the committee's decisions. I don't want to put words in your mouths, but based on the comments that you've made, in most instances, you've indicated why you felt that these changes should be made. So I can take a stab at a draft report on that, present that back to the committee. You can fine tune it and make changes as necessary. And then we're probably at a point where you're able to finalize a report for then submission and presentation to council at an upcoming council meeting. But if there are still additional items that the committee thinks that you need to give consideration to, or that you haven't thought of that you might want to include in a possible compensation package, we can certainly have discussed. I'm not trying to suggest that the work of the committee is done if there are other things you want to consider. But based on the information that we've got today, I can certainly take a stab at drafting a report and costing out some of those options, so you can see what a budgetary impact would be for the remainder of this council term.
And for next year. And
Yeah, that the remainder of this council term, which includes
term. Sorry, thank you.
until the end of 2022.
That sounds good.
Perfect.
So can we set a date for the next meeting? We've been meeting every couple of weeks. I will say that in 2 weeks, that is September 8th. That's not necessarily a really good day for me. But Tuesdays are okay, though. I'm wondering about the 15th. Is that possible for others?
I'm okay with the 15th.
Actually, having said that, I just want to double check another calendar here that I have.
I might have to wash my truck that day, but
What's that?
I might have to wash my truck that day.
Okay,
No, 15th could work for me.
okay.
After
So-
that, we hope to take off for a week and a half or so. So then we're going to I would be beyond Thanksgiving then myself for Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So,
But the 15th is okay for now.
yes, it is.
So I would suggest Tuesday, September 15 at 10 a.m. as we have. Okay. And yes, if some of that information is provided again before our next meeting, whatever is possible within everything that you have to do, Michelle, I recognize that's a lot.
Yeah, I will endeavor to, I'll endeavor to have the report available at least a week ahead of time so council members can take a look at it. The agenda itself will be published as normally on the Thursday or Friday before the meeting. But I can try to have a draft written report submitted to the council members ahead in advance of that agenda. It'll be included in the agenda as well, but if I can, I will do my best. I won't commit exactly what day it'll be, but I'll do my best to try to get it to you at least a week ahead of time so you can have some more thoughts before we actually meet.
Sure. And if I can just ask, and I'm sorry, I'm just not familiar, in my role as chair, is there something that I can need to do in putting that report together?
Actually, it might be beneficial to, if as chair, if you, and your availability of time, if you wanted to I can do the costings. If you wanted to take a stab at some of the verbiage, I can provide you with a template of what the reports typically look like. And if you want to work on populating some of that information as well, particularly in the sense of the rationales and some of the discussions of the committee, that would be very helpful and probably would expedite the preparation of the report as well.
Okay. No, I'm willing to do that. So you just let me know and send that.
I can work with you offline on that one then, certainly.
Yes, yes. That would be great. Okay, I say that. And
September meetings in person, or are we back on the?
Actually, we could look at having the September meeting in person.
It might be a nice way to wrap it up, but.
The council has passed a motion. What do we say, the 15th? We should be able to do it in person at that point. The council is looking at switching in September back to in-person meetings, but with the option of individuals, members of the public or staff or committee members to still be able to participate electronically if they choose. So we're in the process of arranging our technology to allow for potentially a hybrid model, so that if there was somebody that felt compelled still to participate virtually, or if a member of the public wished to participate virtually, or the media, whichever, that we would still allow that option. We don't have all of the technology in place because our meetings are going to be moving from the current council chambers to Malahide Community Place, because we don't have sufficient room in our existing council chambers for appropriate social distancing in most instances. So particularly if members of the public were going to be in attendance. So with that need for a hybrid model, I know long-winded explanation, I apologize, but we don't have all the technology worked out yet. So I'm optimistic that at that point we should be ready to go. But I'm going to reserve the right to have to do virtual if that's how it works. Because again, because these committee meetings are open to the public and the media to be able to attend and participate, we need to ensure that we've got all of the protocols and all the processes in place to enable everyone, whether they're in person or not in person, to be able to continue to participate and observe.
Sure.
And that would be without mask.
Unfortunately, no, that would be with masks. Any gatherings in public facilities such as Malahide Community Place, even with social distancing, council has taken the position that in order to ensure maximum safety of everyone involved, that we would be adhering to face coverings for all meetings that any member of the public would be allowed to be in attendance at.
It brings out your eyes, Martin.
It does. Well, then and if that's the case, I would be, at this moment, at least tending to say, let's do a Zoom meeting as opposed to an in-person meeting behind a mask for 2 hours or an hour and a half or whatever it is.
And that's up to the
my
committee.
personal
If you
feeling,
wish
but-
to continue virtually, absolutely. That's not a problem for staff, obviously, as we've been doing. It's your choice. We continue to allow, as there is one observer that's watching the meeting right now live. So we allow that opportunity for members of the public or the media to be able to continue to observe while we're undertaking our deliberations. So either option is suitable. Like I said, we don't have the technology in place just yet. If the committee is comfortable with virtual, certainly that's fine with us as well.
Mhm. Yeah,
Well,
I'd stay with the virtual.
Maybe we could just, is that okay for everybody to just say, let's do the next meeting virtually?
It's fine with me.
It would be nice to actually meet you fellas. I mean, the fellow at the bottom of my screen, I've kind of met him before, but
Yeah, not so much interested in him.
Well, actually on my screen, that's Marty.
Anyway, I'm just, I mean, we can discuss it, but maybe I mean, this is a fairly small group. I find that some of the virtual meetings are a little bit more difficult when you've got quite a number of participants. This is a small enough group that I think it's worked fairly well, and might be just easiest to say we'll meet virtually for the next one.
Mhm.
And that's fine. I can make those arrangements, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Please do.
All right, September 15 at 10 a.m. then. And I need a motion to adjourn. Martin and Kevin seconds that, and all in favor? Okay, good to see you, everybody.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Take care,
Have a
folks.
good day.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.